Hi everyone, this is Jennifer Shinkai from Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai. Just wanted to let you know before you listen to today's episode with my wonderful guest Maurice Rabb, that we do talk about mental health, mental illness, as well as suicide ideation. We don't go deep into the topic, but we just wanted to let you know that that is what is coming up in case it is something which might trigger you. So I hope that you will enjoy the episode today. Maurice was a fabulous guest. And if you are struggling in any way, please do reach out to TEL or a local provider of mental support services. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer, the host of Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai, where we're going to talk about the Japanese concept of Ikigai, or living a life of purpose. Here you're going to hear inspirational stories from all different types of people who are finding their own life of purpose. You're going to hear about how they found their Ikigai and what they do every day to live an integrated life. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome wherever you are tuning in from around this great world that we live in to Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai. I am your host, Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai's host. I said I'd screw it up and I did again. Jennifer Shinkai, that's my name. Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai is the name of the podcast. I just want to say it again and again. I'm very bad at doing introductions of my own show. Let's hope I do a better introduction of Maurice Rabb, who is our guest today. So thank you so much for joining us today, Maurice. I'm so excited to have you. And I was even more thrilled when I saw you, surprisingly, on Friday night.
Exactly.
Just before we recorded. So, and then we didn't actually talk to each other because I wanted to keep it fresh for today and the situation. But it was really fun to see what a small world Tokyo is and how those different connections. Did you stay on for a Nijikai afterwards, or?
Yes, I will say Sanjikai, Yonjikai.
Woo!
Yeah, it was a pretty late night or early
Right.
morning.
Early. Oh wow. So I left at the right time. So big shout out to Karen
Good
for
for
being
you.
an amazing host. It was great to see her here. But the reason that I invited you was not because your ability to stay out drinking all night. The reason I invited you was because every interaction that I've had with you through LinkedIn and face-to-face at networking events, and especially through your work at TEL, Tokyo English Lifeline, which we're going to talk about today, I've always been so interested in your perspective on and just care for other people, and bringing that with, as a legal professional, as a
Yes.
lawyer. There's a certain bias, right? There's a certain stereotype that some people might have around like how a lawyer is going to show up. And I just have found every message, every interaction to be really fruitful, interesting, made me think. And I think there's a lot in what your experiences are that will be really interesting for Ikigai with Jennifer Shinkai listeners. So let me start with a little bit of your bio introduction. And this is from your role as a member of the Tokyo English Lifeline Japan Executive Board. And you've been on their board for several years. You're a California
Yes.
licensed attorney, professional development and strategy consultant, diversity and inclusion strategist, career coach, and a legal tech evangelist. And oh my goodness, do I love multi-hyphenate people finding senses of why I'm here in the world, what I can do, what makes me feel a sense of ikigai in multiple different sources. So that always excites me in somebody's bio. And you've been living and working in Asia for more than 15 years, in mostly Hong Kong and Japan. Is that right?
Mostly in Japan.
Right.
So I had a little detour to Hong Kong, which I will talk about a little bit later in today's chat. But yeah, mostly in Japan, about 15 years in Tokyo.
Awesome. And then through that time, you've worked for American and Japanese law firms as international business lawyer and in HR. and as well for the Global Education Nonprofit Organization. So that is Maurice. And why don't you just take a moment to talk about, let's go in with the work from TEL, from Tokyo English Lifeline, because the original reason I invited you was, sort of the opposite, I guess, of Ikigai, having a reason to live, is Shinigai. I don't know if it's a real word, but, a reason to die. And obviously part of what TEL is doing is doing like how do you call it actually? Like kind of lifeline. People are in a mental health crisis.
That's one of
So
our
on.
services, a suicide help lifeline. So
That's the word.
yes.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. So tell me a little bit how you got involved with TEL and what it means to you in terms of your Ikigai.
yeah. So it's the interesting part is it actually started for me in my involvement in mental health and mental wellness started in junior high.
Mm.
So I grew up in Illinois, about 2 hours from Chicago, a place called Moline, Illinois. If any one of your listeners is familiar with that area, go Quad Cities. And they had a program for middle school students called the Natural Helpers Program. And that program was really peer to peer, teaching peers how to listen and how to be a kind of sounding board and a resource for other students. And we received training on how to be a good listener, how to listen for problems that the students or our or classmates may be having, and then how to escalate that to an appropriate adult or professional. So I did that at junior high. I went through that in high school. I was a natural helper as well. So I spent about 6 years already in that path. And it was sort of through that during college, I used it several times to save a few classmates from suicide. And that was a training that was kind of always been a part of me. And then it just sort of, I went off into teaching and other helping type of mechanisms and use that training and listening and care for others as a part of how I approached my teaching and eventually how I approached my lawyering. And with TEL, I had come across an event on domestic violence. And I remember very clearly it was in Roppongi Hills, Block C. And it was just talking about sort of domestic violence and how some survivors, what they went through and what type of services that they were getting after surviving, both from a legal angle, and that's part of the reason I went there, was looking at it more from a legal angle, but also from a mental health angle. And one of the presenters was from TEL, our Lifeline director, Vicky, and I just was just so touched. And I ran up to Vicky afterwards and I said, how can I help out? I want to get involved in TEL. And at the time I was actually thinking about becoming a volunteer for the Lifeline. And there's a training that you have to go through and usually people don't disclose that they're a trainer on the or a speaker on the Lifeline. So clearly I'm not because I'm saying it. But I wanted to sort of help on the Lifeline. And given my MPO experience, my experience as a lawyer, and some other experiences that I'd had, I got asked to join the board, which was something that I really wasn't planning to do. It wasn't what I set out to do. But being in having an opportunity to be of service and to help others was something that's always my calling, always something I always do. So I learned a bit about the board and then I joined the board. And for the last 6 years or so, I've been on the TEL board.
That's really interesting, Maurice. I just want to add a kind of takeaway from that. One is if people want to become a TEL volunteer, of course, all the links will be in the show notes so they
Yes,
can
please.
find out about that, of course. But also, sometimes we don't realize all the different ways that we can be of service. And we go, oh, well, I'm not sure that I've got what it takes, for example, to be that type of Lifeline volunteer. So I'm not going to contact this organization. I'm not going to reach out. But then through the conversation, I mean, in your case, you did, but many people put the blockers on there. But through your conversation, you discovered actually there's a different way that I can give back. There's a different way using my unique skills, experiences, and knowledge that I can be of service, that I can get involved in this project. So I think it's an interesting takeaway for me to go, don't shut the door before it's open.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
for those, just to talk a little bit more about TEL itself, has the suicide lifeline, and TEL also has a clinic. And we have therapists there who meet with clients in both English and Japanese. And we do in-person meeting and also teletherapy. TEL, it's just an amazing organization. Like I said, I didn't really hear about it prior to like 2014 or so, 2015. But TEL itself has been around for nearly 50 years. So next
Wow.
April, we're celebrating our 50th year anniversary. So 50 years of really providing services, being here, being a place to listen for mostly English language speakers, for the international community. And it's just amazing, through the HIV crisis, through the earthquake here, through the pandemic now, and even we're doing some work with Ukrainian refugees, which is, we'll timestamp this conversation. But
Mm.
TEL has always been there for the community, both the international schools and expats, returnees, Japanese returnees. It's just such an amazing organization, and I think a very needed piece to this international community here in Japan, which obviously I can go on and on. We just had our offsite board meeting yesterday so I was with the other board members for 9 hours. So TEL is very at the top of my mind, and some of the things that we're thinking about from our strategy, some of the things that we need to do to improve upon, and some of the initiatives that we do want to work on for the next few years, and hopefully the next 50 years and beyond. Yeah.
Mm, that's really interesting. And of course, Tiziana Amprese, one of our previous
Yes.
guests, is a member of the board. So I'm sure you were with her yesterday as well. And I don't
Yes.
want you to, pre-announce anything about the strategy that's not been approved. But when you mentioned around, the pandemic, and I've definitely seen from a coaching perspective a difference in the types of challenges that people are bringing, the thoughts that are coming to coaching conversations. And I wondered if there's been any changes in the trends around what people are coming to TEL with, and what we sort of need to be aware of as members of a community, what people are suffering with, I think, is the question I want to ask.
Yeah, so it there's a lot, and I do want to pause. Like if someone is experiencing difficulties, listening to this podcast, please always feel free to reach out to TEL, or me directly. I'm sure my information will be in the show notes as well. I know that this is not always an easy subject to talk about, and definitely not an easy subject to listen and hear about. But yeah, the world is becoming more complex, right? And particularly during the pandemic, some people couldn't get home to their families. Some people had remote work, and if you like working by yourself in your house, that's great. If you like being in an office and with other people, and having the camaraderie of having other people around you, it's hard to be alone. So I think that, some of the major topics, burnout is a big one, because with working at home, more people are working even more than perhaps in the office. Loneliness is a big topic there, particularly for some expats or international people living in Japan who's not here with a family, and who have family in different parts of the world. And, like I said before, couldn't get in. There's some countries that close their borders. And some, their job is here, but if they leave Japan, they can't get back into Japan. And where are you going to work? What's your livelihood? So that obviously created a bit of financial stress
Mm.
for a lot of people. And children not being able to go to school and be with some of their classmates. That's also been an increase in some of these, mental health needs. And the unfortunate part is kind of on every front. There has been an increase in anxiety, increase in depression, just in general worry. And these are all of the things that we're seeing that tell an increase in our lifeline, an increase in people meeting with our clinicians. We do have an outreach pillar too. We just had, through our outreach, we just had a Tokyo Tower climb, which is one of our big annual events, and the Step Up Challenge, in conjunction with October 10th, which is World Mental Health Day. And even our outreach is getting a lot more calls, a lot of people coming and trying to do webinars and meetings, psychological first safety. So I know that I'm kind of throwing a lot of terms out there, but part of it is just one is there's a lot of work, and there are a lot of different ways to look at this, to deal with these problems. And that to sort of give the breadth of what TEL does. Like there's just so many different types of activities, so many types of resources that we have, both through the website, through other social media, that can help people. And kind of what you were saying earlier, people are at where they are on their journey, right? And for someone, it might be just reading a PDF or reading an article on one of our websites about some breathing techniques that are going to help you get through. For some others, it might be going and attending like a parenting workshop, which I did attend earlier this year because I wanted to get some tips on parenting myself in these ages, and that was very helpful. Or it may be something even a bit more serious, like calling the lifeline or trying to meet with one of the clinicians.
Yeah, so just very like different entry points.
And I would just add, and part of it again, one of the reasons why I wanted to sort of add this breath again is so that if someone is listening, you can realize you're not alone, right? If you're not the only one that's kind of experiencing some of these types of anxiety or stress, or higher stress, because there are lots of others that are also experiencing it as well. Hence the reason we have so many activities, the reason we are looking to provide so many resources is because there are so many people out there that may be having these types of experiences.
Yeah, you just reminded me actually of a situation which I'd totally forgotten or maybe had buried, because it was so upsetting at the time. But when you talked about the school closures, and I remember my son, who at the time, he's in fourth grade now, so he must have been in second grade.
Yeah.
So he's not really like digitally connected to his friends in the way that his older sister was. And he really, really struggled with like the isolation and not seeing his friends, not being in that situation, to the camaraderie of the office, I guess you would call it, the camaraderie of the playground. And I found him sitting, we have a 3-story house, and he was like sitting on the window ledge of his 3rd floor bedroom, which is like a very narrow drop, but just going, oh, I hate it, I can't do it anymore. And I was like, oh my goodness, I thought that I was stressed, but like seeing this stress in him and this, kind of cry for help, like it just reminded me as well that like everybody that we're interacting with every day, we don't know what's going on with them, we don't know what they're carrying. So not even when in doubt, just always be kind.
Right.
Always be kind.
And one of the things that just sort of to add to that is, and I want to be kind of clear. Obviously, I'm not a clinician, so I'm speaking a bit more from my lay experience and my experience from, my involvement with TEL. So not a clinician, but one of the things that I kind of wanted to highlight during this conversation is that can be very helpful. A lot of people go, when they think about mental health or mental wellness, they sometimes go direct to the extremes and think about like a mental illness, or think about something very, very serious, like, schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, or some of these types of other mental illnesses, where one of the good examples that I've seen out there is a mental health pyramid. And at the base of the pyramid is just no distress, no issues. One layer up is like a mental distress, or like a mental um maybe like a test or something, a little bit of anxiety. And then another layer up is a mental problem. That's something a bit more serious, like a death in the family, etc. And then at the very tip of the pyramid is a mental illness. And this is something where you're probably used to hearing more of the conversations where, schizophrenia, maybe someone is hospitalized, maybe a lot of medication. And the reality is most people, very few people don't necessarily get to the mental
Mm.
illness part of the pyramid, but a lot of us and everyone does experience the mental problem, the mental distress, and the sort of no anxiety distress part of the pyramid. And sometimes you can even be at all of the different layers at the same time. So mental health is a continuum,
Mm.
right? And you can have a mental illness, but because you have good coping mechanisms, because you're going to therapy, maybe you're using medicine, maybe not, you have a good handle on your mental health, where you might have someone that isn't getting the coping mechanisms, isn't talking to anyone. And although they're kind of at the mental problem element of it can be a very serious situation. So I want everyone to sort of get in their mind that it's not a 0 to 60. It's not, I'm either healthy or I'm not, right?
Mm.
Or I'm either, no problems at all, no stress, or I have an illness and I have to be hospitalized.
Right.
There's definitely a continuum there. And again, I will send you the link to this. It's a 2 or 3 minute video that I think is very helpful, that you can put in and share with the listeners about sort of the different layers. And I didn't quite do it justice here, but I think if someone saw the video and can go through that, they can get a better sense of what I'm saying. And I think the most important thing that we're especially trying to do with Tell is, even if you get, don't wait until it's too late to try to, I won't say too late, but you don't have to wait until you get to the serious magnitude to reach
Yeah.
out for help or to have a conversation with someone. And a lot of times it's a lot easier to address it and have those conversations kind of earlier on the layers levels of the pyramid.
Yeah, it's sort of course, at any level, like everything is figure outable, and there's a way to find ways and solutions and support. But obviously, when we're more towards one end of the spectrum or lower on
Yes,
the pyramid, the complexity of what needs to be figured out is at a different level. Although sometimes in the moment it feels like it's everything, right? And we
correct,
can't see.
correct.
But yeah, what I'm like taking away from our conversation so far is definitely that idea that it's normalizing
Mm-hmm.
mental health and at different levels of it. And also there are so many different interventions or strategies that you can do to help yourself be healthier and to help other people around you be healthier too, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And particularly, like, like some of the things that I am a big proponent of is, that if you're working for an organization or a corporation, the utilizing the employee assistant program.
Mm.
So EAP is how it's sometimes referred to as short. Most corporations or organizations have an EAP. And again, for listeners who are working, and if you haven't explored your services, I would recommend it. Even now, regardless of where you are on the pyramid, it's always good to know what's available, and to know what's at your organization. And if your organization doesn't have it, please feel free to reach out to me
Ah,
because I
great.
would love to have a conversation, or I can share different resources that can be helpful. I during COVID, it's been tough. Unfortunately, my mother, got COVID and passed away from COVID, and I had to utilize my company's EAP services to really help me through that. I went through grief counseling for several months, and um, and part of it is because I'm in the Toho universe, in the ecosystem, I felt very comfortable doing it. I felt very comfortable telling my manager, telling my partner, telling others. I'm like, yeah, this is something that I need to do, telling my friends, there's help there. And for those who, it's very interesting because not everyone's going to be looking on the YouTube, but the very interesting part, and if you can't tell, but I'm actually African American, which, is something that in the Black community, talking about mental health, mental wellness is also extremely stigmatized.
Mm.
And I would say that it's somewhat similar to maybe even some, Asia communities and other communities. And as a Black man,
I was going to say,
it
yeah.
can be even particularly difficult to open up. We're supposed to be tough. We're, gritty. We tough it out and we work our way through it. And no, and it doesn't work that way. I was gonna say get out here with that bullshit, but the reality, no, we really need to be open and work through some of these situations. There are lots of sort of trauma that different people have dealt with, whether it's racism, et cetera, that,
Mm.
they haven't really addressed yet, which can manifest itself later. So again, it's just another reason that I'm called to this and a huge proponent of it. And, if I a big Black man who, from the US that, from there, if I can talk to counselors and deal with my emotions and look for ways to improve my mental health and mental health, mental health and mental wellness,
Yeah.
I think anyone can.
Anyway.
And again, I know again it's difficult. I know it's different for different people, and that's why there are different mini on ramps and different
Mm.
resources for people to come in for what is comfortable for them.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that story. And of course, very sorry to hear about your mother. It must have been a really tough time with, again, border closures and all of those things. So it's also really kudos to you for reaching out for those resources and knowing like I'm not okay, and having them. And it made me also think about, what leaders who are
Mm-hmm.
listening on the call and people managers need to do. Like you need to, even if you're okay, you need to be educated around what your organization offers as well.
Correct.
And then also
Correct.
in that, it kind of reminds me a bit of how I used, D&I training used to be around like when your team member says she's pregnant, the first words you should say are congratulations.
Yes.
Right, not when are you coming back to work. Like that was actually like a slide that people had in training back in the day, like to remind people to say that. But also,
Mm-hmm.
when one of your team members say I'd like to access the EAP and I don't know anything about it, like how how to respond human to human in that
Right.
moment, I think is very important, because the step that it takes for, from a vulnerability perspective and psychological safety perspective, for your member to ask for help, right?
Right.
um,
And for me, I particularly in Asia, which is where you and I
mm,
are located, at this call, I think it's really you have to take the leadership, and I think that you have to say to your team members, these are the resources available, and it's confidential because a lot of pretty much all of those programs are really confidential. The
right.
information doesn't feed back to your manager or to your company. And if you feel that it does, again, please reach out to me because that's a problem. Uh, putting aside my lawyer hat, but really a lot of them are confidential. But if they don't see their leaders using it or their managers using it or even promoting it,
Mm,
it's very difficult for people to understand, is that going to affect my bonus? Is it going to affect my opportunities at the company? And again, for me, yeah, if you're at a company where you feel that that's the case, then maybe it's the company that's part of the problem, and you need to be thinking about some of your own career opportunities and options, which again I know is can be very difficult, but it is something that sometimes needs to happen. But like I said, with those services, because you were saying managers, leaders, you need to learn what they are. You should be promoting them to your team and to your colleagues, both your laterally and people that
Mm.
report to you.
Yeah.
And if the services are not quality or lacking, then you should be um, speaking up on that. So again, I know it's hard, but these are things that are sometimes needs to happen.
And we've definitely seen that normalization from the corporate wellness and corporate mental health conversation has shifted.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never seen so many posts on LinkedIn about mental health. It's really surprising. But of course, that's like an English language perspective usually.
Yes.
So as you rightly point out, like being based in Japan or in Asia, that I don't quite know what's happening in the Japanese language conversation around these things, but I definitely see a normalizing to an extent. People
Yes.
talking and leaders talking about what's happening for them, right? The vulnerability as the first step of psychological safety.
Yeah. In Japan, we have a bit of a ways to
A
go.
ways to go, a ways to go. Well, we look forward to hearing the tell
Yeah.
plan for the next
Yeah.
5 to 50 years
Yeah.
on that piece.
And what I can say is, particularly for tell, is focused a bit more on the international community. We do have Japanese nationals and Japanese language speakers that reach out to tell, for services. The
Mm.
the government itself, it's a work in progress. Anyone that's listening that might have influences with governments or strong corporates, again, please reach out to me. Would love to collaborate with you on increasing the conversations and normalizing some of these conversations, particularly in Japan. And the one thing that I kind of wanted to go back to is a little bit earlier. You were talking about the story with your son, and thank you for sharing and how you felt as a parent. And one of the things that I want, at least in this conversation, to get out, and what makes it a lot more difficult at this time, is parents are really, really stressed themselves. And we're in a time where, when I grew up, and it was like, go to school, education is the key, which is a big phrase that I heard when I was, growing up. Go to school, get educated, you'll go to the university, you'll get this good job, and basically you have the world is your oyster. And for me, I love school. I love learning. School was fun. School was, it was a safe place. It was enjoyable for me. I loved, I went to school. I went to law school. I became a lawyer. I was corporate lawyer, at a very, big law firm, and working in some of these areas. And I felt accomplished and grateful to be able to get there, but there's still so much uncertainty, right? And one of the reasons, there's several reasons why lawyers, have a lot more anxiety, depression, and obviously that's not the topic of this conversation, but I will say one of the major causes is the uncertainty, and having to do a lot of work and then having a lot of uncertainty about your work, about your life, about the world, etc. And that obviously creates a lot of anxiety. And if you're uncertain about your own career, your own future, that's going to manifest itself into your children. If you are a parent, and you have children, which not everyone does, but for those who do, so
But
I
into
think
like different relationships, even if
exactly,
you're not a
or
parent,
even
right? Your
correct,
anxiety
different,
is going to influence those
correct,
relationships.
correct.
Yeah.
So I think it's extremely important for parents to be thinking about their mental wealth, their mental wellness, and mental health.
Mm.
And particularly, they always say on the plane, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help others. Even your own kids, they try to drill that into
Yeah.
you, and I think that that's very important, which is one of the reasons why I made sure I went to EAP. I lost my mother, but I'm a parent, and I wanted to make sure that I put my oxygen mask on so that I can deal with, my grief and deal with uncertainty and things that I needed to deal with, so that I could be a good parent, a good partner, a good friend, etc. So there are some people that probably will have take away, or let me look about it for my kid. it's great. You do want to take care of your kids or your partner or your friend, but sometimes it's you that
Yeah.
you're the one that should be really thinking about the services or trying to have these conversations. And once you go through it, once you've had, some experiences, then you are better equipped and et cetera to help others. So that's something that I kind of wanted to put out there and add. I
Yeah,
know
no.
it's hard. I know it's hard, particularly for professionals who are, used to being the person that people come to, or, particularly in an industry like law, where the clients are coming to you, or you're defending clients and you feel like, oh, I need to have it all together. I need to have it all together. But in order to do that, you need to make sure that you take care of your own self, your wellness, your mental, physical, etc. So very important. I know people have heard it, but you're hearing it again from me. You're hearing it. You're maybe the way it's said in this podcast may touch you in a different way, but it's something that I think is important, and it's a message that I will continuously say over and over and over,
Yes.
including on LinkedIn.
Yes, and repetition is, the mother of learning, shall we say? So,
Exactly.
it's
Exactly.
definitely there, and it even I was laughing because I was thinking about how I originally positioned this podcast to you, and I was saying, yeah, like, can we like help other people who are struggling with other things? But actually, I think the takeaway is more, yeah, get your own shit together first. Like, yeah,
Yes.
that's before you try to rescue anyone else. Yeah, you have to have a strong foundation for yourself. And actually, that makes you more likely to be able to be there for someone who is in one, somewhere else on the spectrum. Um,
Yes.
and it behooves you to do the work and to look after yourself. And yeah, I see it so often in coaching, and recently I've been doing a lot of like maternity leave or parental leave coaching, and people just not looking after themselves as soon as they become a parent, like not looking after themselves, and just really focused on everyone but themselves. And it's like, you've just made a life, and you're nurturing that life from your own body, and you're going to work. Like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
need
And
to sleep,
slow
exercise,
things,
relaxation is more important than it
slow.
does, all of these things.
Exactly.
So
No, I was gonna,
yeah.
yeah, slow things down.
Mm.
Which it's easier said, but I think that things are moving at a very, very breakneck speed.
Yeah.
And it's just so fast out there these days. And the human mind and the way that we're structured, the way that even our growth doesn't lead to that speed, right? We're not computers. You can't just put in an updated chip and now we process much faster. And there's a lot more information in the process. It's complicated. There are gaps that you need to fill in. Again, uncertainty felt in there. And a lot of it needs to be dealt with a bit slower, which is why mindfulness and meditation are parts of the wellness toolkit,
Mm.
because that helps you kind of slow things down, put things in perspective. We were sort of talking before recording, pushing record. So I don't meditate very often, but I definitely work on. I have a lot of breathing exercises
Mm.
that I work with and that I have to use continuously, because I like to get stuff done. I like stuff to move fast. And once I've identified a problem, I'm like, let's get it done. Let's solve it. But some things are very difficult. Their time, particularly living in Japan, things move at glacier speed sometimes. So you have to sort of take that step back and breathe and let it go a little bit smoother, and from there go forth, which can be a struggle for me, but it's something that has been very helpful over the particularly the last several years.
And that kind of links into a topic that I wanted to talk to you about as well today, which was about kind of your own in between place that you're in with uncertainty and
Yes.
kind of, yeah, letting things go. So Perhaps you could update what's happening around, yeah, that situation
Yeah,
for the
exactly.
listeners.
Thank you. As I, had mentioned before, part of the reason I kind of delayed this recording, even though we sort of chatted several weeks ago, I delayed it because I thought I was gonna have like a big announcement that I wanted to unveil and be like, this is my announcement, that this is what I'm working on, etc. But I don't have a big announcement. And as a bit of a backstory, um, we talked about Hong Kong. The last 2.5 years, I had been going back and forth between Tokyo and Hong Kong. My family was still in Hong Kong or in Tokyo. I was living in Hong Kong, and quarantines. I've done my fair share on both sides, both 21 day, 14 days, 7 days, 21 days. So I've spent a lot of time in quarantines, and in Hong Kong it's
One way to slow things
hotel,
down.
etc. And it really is sort of that back and forth. And I basically had a conversation with my organization and said I just can't keep going back and forth. And this isn't the right timing to relocate to Hong Kong. I think Tokyo is the place, I want to be for the time being. We had some conversations, and unfortunately it didn't work out where I could be back in Tokyo with that organization. So I left, right? I said, deuces, peace. I have to go and be back in Tokyo. And it wasn't something that was planned out. I came back to Tokyo, no job,
Yeah.
no. And I took a few weeks, rest, spent some time with the family, and then started reaching out to people and looking at different opportunities. And as of today or of this recording, I have a few things that I'm still in discussions with, but nothing confirmed, right? So, and even as I'm speaking right now, I'm not sure which of the opportunities will materialize, right? But I'm confident that with my network, the people I know, the skill set, etc., something will come out, and it's going to be a good opportunity. It's going to be amazing, a place where I can meet all of the elements of the guy, right? Where
Mm.
something I love, something I'm helping people, the world definitely needs, and I gotta make some revenue because shoes, the baby needs some shoes, right? so I'm pretty sure that it's gonna meet all those areas, but I can honestly say, like I said, I don't know
Mm.
which area it's gonna be. I don't know. I have some hopes, and I have areas that I want to take off, but you never know when it is and if the timing's right. So yeah, it's a very real situation, and
Mm.
kind of what I was saying before, breathe, take a deep breath. I take at least an hour a day just to unplug from online, not listening to anything, just sitting with my thoughts. And fortunately I have the space and the time to do that. I know that not everyone has that opportunity, but I have been utilizing it, and I think that has been helpful, and has helped my mental health and my wellness. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll see what
Yes.
happens.
We're
We'll see what happens
excited.
on the journey. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough sometimes. I have to admit. Sometimes I'm like, why did I do it? I
Mm.
could have done another quarantine.
And
Or it could have done something else, but I still think it was the best decision.
yeah, I feel that comes up a lot when people have the realization that yes, what I'm currently doing is not giving me this sense of ikigai. It doesn't feel sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this is not what I want, but I don't know what's next. Um, Cutting the cords, right?
Yes.
Doing that step is absolutely terrifying. I did it myself. Like I left my company and I decided I'd set up a business. I'd never run a business before, and that moment of just making making that choice. Um, and I just wonder if you have from your experience, advice to people who are maybe haven't made the decision yet? Of course, not advice, but perhaps what it was that happened for you that made you make that choice. We
Right.
don't want to
So
say, yeah, quit your job, everybody, because we don't know anyone's situation. So not advice, but your
yeah.
lived experience, like where you are and what that might inform somebody else who's in that
Well,
situation.
well, for me, and full disclosure, I've done it several times.
Did it get
So
easier?
this it does get it. No, this was last one was the hardest
All right.
because of the environment, economy, and stuff, right? And the
Okay.
older you get, the harder it gets to do it,
Mm.
right? So,
So
um,
the advice is do it when you're younger.
that's
Don't wait till you're
that's
older. You got a house, a
yeah,
mortgage, kids. Yeah.
that's one. I mean, the
I don't
biggest
know.
thing is I do think particularly and it depends on where people are, and I can talk a bit from like a corporate or business, like corporation lens.
Mm.
But from there is really do take an inventory of your skill set, your knowledge, what you have. I think if you need to talk to a coach, career coach, or even a recruiter, to get a sense of like what's your market value and
Mm.
what's the market like, I think that that can give you comfort, right? Because if you, as I was saying before, the way I review things is my skill set, my network, my knowledge should be good, should be so strong that if I lose a role, I can find a job that's equal to or better to it within 5 months.
Mm.
Right. And that's what I call like job security. Job security is not lifelong employment to me. Job security, if you want to stay in a job, is you can find another role equal to or better within 5 months, right? It may
Mm.
be quicker depending on what field you're in. It may take a little longer than 5 months. But so if you, for that person that's unsure of where they are in their career, if you can sit and say to yourself, I'm pretty sure that I have the network, the skills, the knowledge, that if something happened, I could find another job between, in 5 months. If the answer is yes, then you can relax a little bit, test
Mm.
it by talking with a recruiter, talking with a career coach, talking maybe even going out and interviewing.
Yeah.
But if you look at it and you say, I can't say that, then that's what you need to start working on right away. Right. You need to start working on it or either beef up your savings or something, because you're at risk, right? Because if you
Mm.
can't say that, so that's kind
That's
of the
really
corporate.
practical. That's
Yeah.
super helpful, I think, to like look, do that inventory. And
And
then if you've
yeah.
not got what you need,
Yes,
then start building it.
exactly. And if you do, and a lot of those skills, particularly as knowledge, if you're a knowledge worker or even a technical skill, you can work as a consultant then.
Mm.
Right. And I think consultant typically is a good bridge role. Like if you're leaving one organization, you're not sure what kind of culture, what kind of mission you want to work with, then sometimes it's good work as a consultant, do it for a few months. It gives you some income, it gives you keep you kind of in the game somewhat,
Yeah.
and it gives you time to look for other opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
have
of
a
that.
I have a whole bunch of opinions on careers and career building. So again, if people want to reach out and chat, I know you do as well,
Yeah.
as a coach in the space. But yeah, this is the area of huge interest, and I do spend a bit of time on LinkedIn, kind of talking about this, because that's time is limited, right? As they always say, the cliche,
Yeah.
right? And if you're not using your hours, someone else is using them for you.
Indeed.
So,
Indeed.
and do you want someone else to use them, or do you want to use your hours? So that's kind of my
Yeah.
philosophy.
Awesome. And my doorbell is telling me that it's nearly time for us to wrap up. So the question that I want to ask you is, what's the question I should have asked you? What's something we didn't have a chance to talk about yet that you really want to share on the podcast today?
Right. So I would say what makes me optimistic and hopeful.
So what makes
Um,
you optimistic and hopeful, Maurice? I've asked it now.
yes, thank you. No, I think that I think humans are resilient, and I think that we always find a way to survive and and hopefully thrive, more going in the future. And on the one hand, you can look at current situations and think, oh my God, it's so complex, it's crazy, there's so many hard problems out there. What do I do? And for me, I think, yes, there are many, many problems, but you can't solve all of them, right? And you can't solve all of them alone.
Mm.
So if you can think about what's your area, what's your niche that you're going to focus on. So obviously for me, it's more mental wellness, mental health, careers. That's my area that I focus on. Someone else, it might be global warming. Someone else, it might be immigration or immigration rights, etc. But say, yes, there's many things out there, but there are 8 billion people in the world. We are resilient people. If we can sort of pick our area that we want to focus on, if we can pick that area that we want to contribute and contribute at a deeper level, and I'm sure other people will start picking those areas as well, then I think that can be that's going to be great for society, right? If we all just throw our hands up and say, no, let's just go watch TikTok all day, then maybe we got a problem.
Yeah.
But I know that most people will want to do something. Pick your area, pick your niche, pick that intersection of where you
Mm.
want to be, and which is part of the Ikigai. Where can you contribute the most? What the world needs, and be comfortable in that decision and live with it.
Yeah.
So
I like that idea of, yeah, you don't have to solve everything.
no,
Just find one thing which really speaks to you and work around that. And I just want to offer something. So several times today you've sort of misspoken, but I think it's really been brilliant because you've said mental wealth so
yes,
many times as a I feel like it's your new catchphrase, mental
that's
wealth.
great. I
But
like mental wealth.
yeah, you've
Yes,
said it
that's
like
great.
when you listen to this, you'll have mental wealth, but it's, and then you said, oh, sorry, I mean mental health, mental wellness. But maybe what we need to think about, like from a position of like someone, so someone who says they have Ikigai actually has
Yes,
mental wealth. They have a sense of room
yes.
in their mind. They're hopeful about the future. They feel connected to society.
Trademark.
Um,
I'm gonna.
yeah,
I
I
got.
think
I got to see if I need to trademark that.
yeah, exactly. If you haven't, you heard it here first, guys.
You heard it here
Um,
first.
yes, I think we got a lawyer in the house, so I'm sure it will all be it will all be sorted out. Yeah, so I think it's a great takeaway to, what's in your mental wealth bank balance right now, and how can you kind
Exactly.
of fill that up a little bit more. And it comes from all different sources, and there's many different entry points, different ways to sort of increase that balance, whether it's through, yeah, reading a PDF, taking a deep breath, or like working with a clinician. And there's a, kind of a medical support, a medicinal support is what I'm wanting to
Yes.
say as well, like that can come in too. So yeah, mental wealth is a huge takeaway from today. So any
Thank
final
you.
comments from you, Maurice, on
No, I
that?
just want to, yeah, thank you for the opportunity for this chat. Again, if it for some of the listeners, if you find something that is triggering, please do know that Tel is here. If you're not in Japan, obviously Tel is based more in Japan, but if you're not in Japan and you need some local resources, please do reach out to me. And I can see what I can help you find. So thank you, and everyone stay mental wealthy.
Mentally wealthy. I love it. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your stories, your network,
Yes.
and also your in between time, because I think that many people can learn from that. And I think that when we're trying to bring in more of a sense of ikigai, sometimes we have these bumps in the road. It's not always
Mhm.
as smooth as we think, but also that's part of the journey too, and to slow down, to
Correct.
breathe into it, and to have this hope that, yeah, a better day is coming, because all the
It's coming.
pieces are there in there anyway.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. All of
Thank
Maurice's
you.
contact information will be in the show notes. Like and subscribe, all of those different things. And of course, yeah, please be mentally wealthy. Mental health is health, as Maurice's background on YouTube says. So,
Thank you.
yeah, look after yourselves, everybody, and we'll see you again for the next episode. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.